Imagine, your anger doesn't disappear, but accumulates over years, poisoning every thought. Nietzsche called this resentment, the most destructive force of the human psyche. This isn't a burst of rage, it's a chronic disease of the soul that turns powerlessness into morality, and revenge into the meaning of life. The worst part? You don't even notice how you become its hostage. Social media, politics, relationships, resentment rules everything. Ready to look in the mirror and see how this works in your life? This video will have the most complete breakdown of all of Nietzsche's philosophy. Part 1. The Psychology of Resentment. How toxic anger rewrites reality. Nietzsche hit the nail on the head when he uncovered the psychology behind resentment. We're not talking about your run-of-the-mill anger that flares up and then melts away. Resentment is a slow-brewing, venomous feeling that twists how you see the world and how you set your values. Getting a grip on it is like holding a magnifying glass to one of the more dangerous traits in our human psyche. Here's how it breaks down, step by step. First off, it kicks in with a sense of frustration. This happens when you're blocked from getting what you want or need. That frustration might be tied to feeling powerless with money, being socially outcast, or even grappling with a physical limitation. What's key here is that you can't just tackle the issue head on. You're stuck. Maybe because you lack the power, know-how, or the right chance to make a move. Then comes the next part, rumination. You're so stuck on the unfairness of it all that you can't stop playing the same scenarios in your head. You're zeroed in on who's to blame and what ticks you off. Unlike a healthy kind of anger that nudges you to do something and then fades, this resentment sticks around like a bad habit, keeping you in a constant bitter funk. You start to wallow in your pain, almost as if you're addicted to it. Unable to get back at them in real life, your imagination steps in, constructing revenge plans in your head where you emerge victorious and your foes are crushed. This is stage 3, where daydreams take the place of reality. You build whole mental movies where justice is served. The big shots are taken down a peg, and you're finally justified. These fantasies might give you a quick fix, but in the end, they only make things worse because they keep you from facing reality. Eventually, you end up flipping your values upside down. You start convincing yourself that being weak is actually a sign of moral strength, and that power is something bad. This is the game changer stage because it turns a simple defense mechanism into a full-blown belief system. The person who feels weak tells themselves it's better to be weak than strong. Suffering gets rebranded as a virtue, being timid becomes wisdom, and being powerless is seen as purity. This flips the script in their head. They're still powerless, but they get to feel morally above those who have power. It's a moral win, even if the practical battle is lost. And this isn't just some old-fashioned idea. You see it today. Think about social media's cancel culture. Many folks who aren't feeling too powerful in their own lives find a sense of moral high ground by going after others online. They can't compete with high flyers toe-to-toe, so they twist success into corruption and make failure out to be a virtue. Or consider the victim mindset in therapy. Some people get so wrapped up in their victimhood that healing doesn't even look appealing. Consider political movements that aim to tear down the successful rather than lift up the ones struggling. These are all signs of the same psychological trick Nietzsche pointed out ages ago. So what's the fix for resentment? It begins when you notice it. Ask yourself, do I focus more on what people have done to me than on what I can do myself? Do I secretly feel glad when someone who seems successful stumbles? Am I more comfortable seeing myself as a victim than as someone who can act? Do I turn my weak spots into badges of honour and my goof-ups into moral standpoints? These are the questions that can help you see if resentment's got a hold of your mind. Part 2. In the middle of Nietzsche's psychological ideas, you find this really heated topic called the will to power. Now, this isn't all about taking over countries or using brute strength. Nope. It's really about this deep-rooted push that gets people moving and doing things. Once you get to grips with this will to power, it's like finding the key to what secretly fuels people's actions. It's kind of similar to what Freud would later talk about as the libido. But here's the twist. Where Freud is talking mostly about sexual energy, Nietzsche's more on about being creative and finding one's true potential. Think of the will to power as this urge we have to grow ourselves, break through barriers and master not just our surroundings, but also ourselves. Everything we do can be seen as a version of this will to power playing out. So if someone's diving into learning, they're essentially winning over ignorance. Creating art? That's them taking chaos and ordering it with forms and meanings, making new friends or connections. They're bridging the gap between being alone and finding purpose. And if it looks like someone's sacrificing something, it might really be them taking control over their basic desires on a whole other level. Most of the time, this drive works under the radar of our awareness. We often don't really get what's truly pushing us because these competing drives are on autopilot. For example, someone might say they do things out of sheer kindness, but deep down, it could be a need to feel above others, or that truth seeker. They could actually want to use knowledge as a means to have power over others. Someone chasing success might be fueled by a need to show their worth to a parent who dismissed them years ago. This pattern of behavior is mostly dictated by underlying power drives, and we usually fit some explanation to it after it's all happened. Modern brain science backs up what Nietzsche thought about our hidden motivations. Research shows our brains kick off actions before we're even consciously aware we've made a decision. What feels like our conscious choice is mostly our brains explaining actions that were already set in motion, unconsciously. Behavioral economics shows us how what we think are logical decisions often ride on emotional and subconscious waves. Social psychology highlights how a hefty chunk of our actions is about seeking prestige, influence and control, despite us believing they come from noble ambitions. All these points support Nietzsche's idea that the will to power is the major force driving human behavior. In therapy, tuning into the will to power can totally shift how we handle psychological challenges. Instead of labeling symptoms as issues needing eradication, we can view them as the will to power going a bit astray. So a depressed person might be turning this drive against themselves, not dealing with the world. Anxiety, that could be an attempt at managing outcomes through constant worry. Addiction could be about finding dominance over one's emotional state using substances. In each situation, the trick is to realign the will to power towards healthier outlets, instead of just trying to shut it down. The peak of expressing the will to power, as Nietzsche described, is all about self-overcoming. It's about pushing past your current boundaries and becoming more than who you are now. It calls for bravery, because it involves leaving behind your comfort zone and exploring uncharted territory. It needs persistence, because it's about going for long-lasting growth rather than immediate ease. But it pays off with real empowerment and true self-discovery. When you sync your conscious ambitions with this inner drive for power, there's no stopping you. Part 3. Fooling Ourselves, the Mystery Within. Nietzsche blew minds with a pretty wild idea. We don't really know ourselves all that well. He believed that what we're aware of, our consciousness, is just the surface, like the tip of an iceberg floating above the deep, dark waters of our unconscious mind. Back then, people thought we could understand ourselves perfectly through rational thought, so Nietzsche's view was a real game changer. He pointed out that we often trick ourselves about why we do, what we want, and who we really are. He laid out some sneaky ways our minds deceive us. First off, we often cook up logical reasons for things we've already done, even though those actions might have been driven by hidden motives. Take someone ending a relationship. They might say it was for moral reasons, but really, they're just scared of getting too close. Or someone might choose a job pretending it's all about the noble cause, when really they just want to impress the folks at home. These stories we tell ourselves feel legit, because our minds smooth them out for us. Then there's the blaming game. We shove our hidden flaws and traits onto other people, Like if you spot someone always calling others out for being selfish, chances are they're the selfish one. Or if someone sees manipulation everywhere, you can bet they might be the master manipulator themselves. It's like we dump our unwanted bits onto others to keep feeling good about ourselves. And there's what Nietzsche called the noble self-deception. We spin tales that make us look like heroes in our own stories. A businessman might say he's all about creating value, but maybe he's just squeezing his workers dry. A parent might think she's got her kids' best interests at heart, while she's actually trying to control them. An activist might believe he's all about justice, but sometimes it's just his own grudges coming out. We don't do this on purpose. It's our mind's way of saving us from some tough home truths. Modern psychology backs Nietzsche up on this. Studies show we twist facts to keep our self-image shiny. There's stuff like the fundamental attribution error, where we blame outside junk for our mess-ups and praise ourselves when things go right. Confirmation bias has us only seeing what we want to see, while the Dunning-Kruger effect shows how the least skilled often think they're aces. All these quirks keep us from facing cold, hard facts about ourselves. When it comes to therapy, this is major. Regular therapy might assume knowing stuff about yourself means you'll change, but Nietzsche knew better. Most of us dodge deep self-knowledge because it shatters the stories we've told about ourselves. The aim isn't to wipe out self-deception completely. That'd be impossible and maybe not even a good idea, but to spot our biggest lies and face them head-on. Nietzsche called it intellectual honesty, being brave enough to stare down those uncomfortable truths. It's about questioning why we do what we do, looking at our habits, and owning up when we're wrong. Plus, getting comfy with not knowing all the answers. Some hands-on ways to boost our self-awareness include jotting down why we say we do things and then checking back to see if we're fooling ourselves. Think about it for a moment. Why exactly did I make that choice? If my opponents were to weigh in, how would they interpret my intentions? Are there recurring behaviours that I've been turning a blind eye to? The idea here isn't to beat yourself up, but to take a genuine look inside for the sake of becoming truer to yourself and gaining mental clarity. Once you stop pulling the wool over your own eyes, you're in a better position to make real changes. Part 4. Alright, let's dive into this idea of psychological growth that Nietzsche brought up in his work. Before many of the concepts in modern psychology were established, Nietzsche laid out a framework that kind of predicts what's known today as psychological development. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he talks about these 3 transformations of the spirit: the camel, the lion, and the child. Each of these is a stage people go through as they grow into their true selves. Getting a handle on these stages helps you figure out where you stand in your journey and what your next step might be. First up, we have the camel. This stage is all about carrying the load. Here people take on the values and expectations thrown on them by society, family and traditions. Imagine asking yourself, what's the heaviest thing I can carry? People in this stage take on duties, roles and cultural norms without question. It's an important time for initial socialization and picking up the essential skills of life. Kids and young adults often find themselves in this camel stage, soaking up the wisdom and rules handed down to them. During this phase, people learn discipline, responsibility, and how to work with others. They build a strong work ethic, solid moral values, and learn to put off immediate gratification. Essentially, they learn to handle adult responsibilities and contribute to society. However, if someone never moves past this stage, they become part of the herd, as Nietzsche would say, always dependent on others to guide them and validate their actions without ever forming their own opinions or values. Next is the lion stage, which is all about breaking things down. In this phase, people start questioning the values they have inherited and the authorities over them. They ask themselves, why should I follow these rules? This stage is marked by rebellion against old idols and moralities. It's what you'd associate with teenage rebellion or a midlife crisis. People in this stage realize that what they've been taught might not align with who they truly are. It's a time of challenging, questioning and rejecting old ways. They shift from saying, You must to I will. This stage helps in developing the independence needed to find one's own values, but if people don't move on from here, they might become stuck in a cycle of constant rebellion without building anything meaningful in its place. Finally, there's the child stage, representing the creative spirit that embraces life with a yes. In this stage, individuals move beyond just following or rebelling and begin to create their own values and meanings from a place of innocence, playfulness and creativity. They've managed to balance the discipline learned as a camel and the independence found as a lion into a harmonious blend. They can establish their own values while still being productive members of society, welcoming life with open arms while staying true to themselves. Modern psychology backs up Nietzsche's stages to some extent, with Erik Erikson's and Lawrence Kohlberg's theories showing similar patterns like initial conformity, rebellion in teenage years, and mature integration later. Additionally, ideas from spiral dynamics about consciousness evolving through traditional, modern, and postmodern stages align with Nietzsche's thoughts. Overall, Nietzsche was among the first to map this developmental path with such clarity and wisdom. In the 5th section, we're diving into a concept called amor fati, which is basically about loving your destiny. We're talking about a deep acceptance of everything that's happened in your life, even the tough stuff like pain and failure. But this isn't just about sitting back and accepting things. It's about embracing everything, including the hard times, because they've played a part in helping you grow. This mindset helps you change the way you see your struggles and frees you from dwelling on past regrets. Usually we look back and wish things turned out differently, especially when times were tough. But amor fati flips this on its head. It asks you to recognize that everything, even the not-so-great moments, shaped who you are today. Instead of beating yourself up over past mistakes, you see them as valuable lessons. Instead of getting stuck in bitterness over pain, you appreciate how it built your resilience and kindness. This isn't about fooling yourself into thinking everything is great or pretending bad things never happened. It's about totally shifting how you see your life story to change its meaning. You're no longer stuck in the past. Instead, you're crafting your future. A key part of amor fati is separating the events that occurred from what they mean to you. You can't undo what's happened, but you can choose what those experiences mean to you. For instance, what seemed like overwhelming loss might actually have pushed you to discover strengths you didn't know you had. A painful breakup might have taught you what qualities matter most in a partner. Losing a job might have nudged you towards your real passion. When you start seeing these hidden opportunities in what seemed like total disasters, you build a kind of emotional toughness and freedom. Plus, there's research backing this up. Studies show that people who find meaning after trauma often come out stronger, developing deeper appreciation for life, better relationships, and even a clearer sense of purpose. Amor fati isn't just something to consider once you've gone through hard times. It's something you can actively start doing. Instead of hoping personal growth just happens on its own, you can make a conscious choice to embrace your path. This idea is being used in therapy and personal growth too. Therapists might help people reframe their victim stories or regrets by doing an amor fati exercise. Here's how it goes. First, think about a major negative experience from your past. Next, list how this experience has helped you grow, become stronger, wiser, or more compassionate. Then imagine what your life would be like if this experience had never happened. Finally, ask yourself if you'd really want to erase that experience, knowing what you know now. Many people find that despite the pain, they wouldn't erase their past because it's made them who they are. This understanding is a massive relief. Remember, amor fati isn't about saying you're thankful for suffering or pretending pain is good. It's about taking control of how you assign meaning to your experiences. You may not have control over events themselves, but you do have a say in what they mean to you. When you fully embrace this, you become emotionally resilient. Nothing outside can break you, because you've learned to turn any situation into something that fuels your growth. That's real psychological freedom. Part 6. How Nietzsche shaped Freud's ideas, the genesis of the unconscious. Freud might have insisted he never browsed through Nietzsche's work to fend off any influence claims, but the similarities between their thoughts suggest otherwise. Nietzsche seemed to have foreseen many of Freud's groundbreaking ideas about the unconscious, repression, and the underlying reasons for how we behave. Delving into this connection unveils how Nietzsche's psychological musings paved the way for what we now know as psychoanalysis and depth psychology, even though he was delving into the unconscious far before Freud popularized it. Nietzsche grasped early on that what we're conscious of is only a tiny fragment of our mental life. He expressed that we hardly know ourselves, and our conscious thoughts often serve as complex excuses for unconscious urges. This idea very much mirrors Freud's concept of the mind split into the conscious ego, the unconscious ID, and the moral superego. Nietzsche also spotted that beneath our polished surface lie raw instincts and drives that sway us more than we care to admit. He noted how our minds dodge certain thoughts and feelings, essentially a forerunner to what Freud would call repression, to spare us psychological discomfort. Nietzsche also touched upon the idea of sublimation, where raw drives morph into greater cultural accomplishments. He realized creations in art, philosophy, and even morality often derive from the same primal forces behind basic human behaviors. For instance, artists turn sexual energy into creative works, philosophers channel the will for power into seeking truths, and moral reformers transform personal grievances into fights for social justice. Nietzsche observed civilization itself feeds off these redirected energies. Moreover, Nietzsche was ahead of the curve in understanding dreams, fantasies, and imagination's roles in psychology, something Freud would later explore in depth. Nietzsche understood dreams expose unspoken desires and conflicts that can't be faced head-on. He saw how people weave intricate fantasies to make up for real-life disappointments, and he appreciated that symptoms and actions often carry hidden meanings that need decoding. These insights became pillars of psychoanalytic theory and application. Nietzsche was doing the groundwork for depth psychology long before anyone recognized it as such. The seeds of psychological defense mechanisms are also found in Nietzsche's writings. He pointed out how individuals push unacceptable traits onto others, find lofty justifications for their actions, and shift their feelings onto more acceptable outlets. He grasped that our minds deploy complex strategies to shield themselves from unsettling truths. He knew how people can get ensnared in self-created fables and live out their own lies. These observations were later fashioned by Freud and his followers as a thorough framework for understanding ego defenses, but it was Nietzsche who laid down the essentials. Most crucially, Nietzsche believed psychological healing happened when we bring unconscious drives into consciousness. His view was that the root of suffering comes from not understanding these inner forces. The solution lies in making these unknown drives conscious, allowing for intentional guidance rather than being ruled by them without realizing it. This directly aligns with the aims of psychoanalytic therapy. Nietzsche even took a therapeutic approach to his own life experiences, using his writing as a tool for self-analyses, long before Freud championed the talking cure. Part 7. Jung took a lot more from Nietzsche than Freud did, and he was much more open about admitting it. Carl Jung immersed himself in Nietzsche's work for years, and even held seminars on Thus Spoke Zarathustra that went on for quite some time. You can see Nietzsche's influence in Jung's big ideas like the shadow, individuation, and bringing together opposing forces. This link shows just how much Nietzsche's thinking shaped one of the most influential therapy methods of the last century. The idea of the shadow, which Jung describes as those hidden, suppressed parts of us, definitely has its roots in Nietzsche. Nietzsche got that everyone has conflicting urges and believed it was better to acknowledge those darker sides than to push them away. He discussed blending what he called the Dionysian side of our nature, wild instinctual creative forces that society often tries to bottle up. Jung's shadow work is all about recognizing and taking in those parts of ourselves that we tend to ignore or hide. Nietzsche also laid the groundwork for what Jung would call individuation, which means becoming who you genuinely are, not just who others want you to be. He wrote a lot about the significance of creating your own values instead of just going with what's handed down from society. He saw that real psychological growth involves moving beyond just fitting in or rebelling to find your true path. This is what Jung meant by individuation, setting yourself apart from the group but still staying connected to it. Both Nietzsche and Jung understood that truly being yourself takes a lot of bravery and ongoing effort. You've got to be okay with standing on your own when needed while still being part of the world around you. Jung also picked up from Nietzsche the theme of integrating opposites. Nietzsche knew that being psychologically whole means embracing conflicting experiences rather than choosing one side over the other. We all have good and bad, strong and weak, happiness and sadness, the ability to create and destroy within us. The aim isn't to get rid of the bad parts, but to bring them together in a meaningful way. Jung's idea of the transcendent function, which merges what's on the surface with what's underneath, reflects this idea. Both thinkers turned away from simple either-or thinking and leaned towards more nuanced both-and solutions. Nietzsche's thoughts on different mindsets also helped shape Jung's typology concept. Nietzsche talked about differences between noble and slave mindsets, active versus reactive people, creators and followers. He realized that people have unique psychological outlooks that affect how they see and react to the world. Jung expanded on this by developing his psychological types, like introversion versus extroversion, thinking versus feeling, sensing versus intuition. Both acknowledged that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to mental health. Rather, there are unique paths suited to different personalities. What matters is nurturing your innate abilities instead of trying to become something you're not. Jung's way of doing therapy also shows Nietzsche's touch. Instead of just zeroing in on problems and symptoms, Jung put the spotlight on growth, creativity, and self-discovery. He viewed therapy as a journey to become more wholly yourself, rather than just solving issues. This lines up with Nietzsche's focus on personal creation and self-improvement. They both saw that real psychological recovery meant uncovering and following your unique potential, not just trying to fit into what's considered normal. They were all about helping people become amazing, not just well-adjusted. The idea of the wounded healer, a key part of Jung's theories, also traces back to Nietzsche. Nietzsche believed that out of suffering, wisdom could arise, and often our deepest wounds turn into our strongest assets. He suggested that thinkers and creative people often come out of their personal turmoil. Building on this, Jung turned it into a guiding principle for therapy. When therapists acknowledge and work through their own wounds, they can harness them as a healing force. Both thinkers understood that real psychological growth often means facing and moving through our inner darkness directly. They viewed crises as opportunities and saw breakdowns as chances for breakthroughs. In Part 8, we dive into how Nietzsche's ideas shaped Alfred Adler's individual psychology. Among the psychologists who drew inspiration from Nietzsche, Adler stands out as the one who integrated his concepts most directly. Adler openly credited Nietzsche and wove the notion of the will to power into his own psychological theories. He took Nietzsche's idea and saw it as a key drive to overcome feelings of being less than and strive for mastery or superiority. This became central to how Adler understood the growth of personality and psychological issues. Adler's most well-known idea, the inferiority complex, came straight from his engagement with Nietzsche's work. He saw that everyone starts life feeling weak and reliant. Kids, being smaller and less capable than adults, naturally feel inferior. The healthy way forward is to tackle these feelings through personal effort and growth. But not everyone manages this well. Some get stuck on their feelings of being lesser, forming a complex where they see themselves as always inadequate. This can lead them to either give up entirely or try compensating with unhealthy ways of seeking power. Nietzsche's take on resentment informed Adler's views on how feelings of inferiority can turn problematic. If people can't conquer their limits through direct means, they might resort to more roundabout ways of gaining power, like playing the victim to manipulate others through guilt, or becoming critics who belittle others to lift themselves up. They might also act like martyrs who gain power through their suffering. These are all flawed expressions of the will to power that end up reinforcing their inferiority. Adler also adopted Nietzsche's focus on individual uniqueness and the art of self-creation. He didn't agree with Freud's idea that our personalities are set in stone by our early childhood. Instead, he believed we can decide how we react to life's challenges and shape our personalities through our choices, echoing Nietzsche's view that we aren't prisoners of our past, but creators of our future. Adler called this the creative self, the ability to shape our responses based on our personal goals and values. This was groundbreaking at a time when biological and environmental determinism dominated the scene. The idea of social interest, a core element in Adlerian therapy, also has roots in Nietzsche's philosophy. While Nietzsche is often misread as solely promoting individualism, he actually recognized that humans are social beings who need community to thrive. Adler expanded on this by theorizing that real psychological well-being involves balancing personal growth with contributing to society. It's not about overpowering others, but about finding one's unique way to add to the common good. This ties back to Nietzsche's ideal of a higher type of person who creates values beneficial not just for themselves but for all of humanity. True greatness involves raising others up, not pushing them down. Adler's therapeutic methods focus on boosting and empowering people, steering clear of dwelling excessively on their issues. This mirrors Nietzsche's emphasis on strength and potential rather than weakness and limitations. Adlerian therapists encourage clients to recognize their hidden strengths and come up with ways to overcome challenges, focusing on what they can achieve rather than what's holding them back. This foreshadows modern positive psychology and approaches that highlight people's strengths. Both Nietzsche and Adler believe that progress comes from building on what's strong within us, rather than trying to erase what's weak. A key Adlerian technique is the lifestyle assessment, which involves helping clients uncover the subconscious patterns that drive their actions. Nietzsche had this idea that we mostly don't know ourselves very well, and that growing psychologically means bringing some of those hidden patterns to light. Adler came up with certain techniques to spot these patterns by looking at early memories, how family works, and examining behavior. The aim here is to make people see the way they've been living their lives, and decide if they want to keep things the same or switch it up. This kind of self-awareness gives individuals the power to take charge of their lives, rather than getting pushed around by habits they've unknowingly formed over time. Basically, it shifts them from just going along with their subconscious tendencies to making conscious choices about where they're headed. Part 9. Nietzsche dug deep into human psychology with his thoughts on master and slave mentalities, showing us a whole new way to look at how people tick. These aren't about social status, but more about how our minds are wired from a young age and help us understand why some folks excel, while others hit a wall, even if they started in pretty much the same place. The good part is, these ways of thinking can be turned around with effort and maybe a little therapy. People with a master mentality believe they're in charge of their lives. They think their choices and actions can steer their ship. When the problems pop up, instead of pointing fingers, they figure out what they can change about their approach. Their self-worth comes from their own accomplishments and growth, not from sizing themselves up against others. They craft their own set of values based on their journey and don't just blindly follow what they're told. On the flip side, the slave mentality is all about seeing the world as something that happens to you. People with this view think they're mostly at the mercy of things out of their control. They're fixated on how others impact them rather than what they can do on their own. When challenges arise, they're more likely to ask who's at fault instead of what they can learn. Their sense of being is tied up in moral high ground or victimhood rather than personal victories. Often they take in values from authority figures without questioning, or they rebel without crafting their own path. Usually, these mindsets kick in during childhood, influenced by what happens at home and how kids attach to their caregivers. Kiddos encouraged to explore, mess up, and learn tend to grow into masterful thinkers, seeing how they can mould their world through their efforts. Those who are shielded too much, criticised, or dealt a bad hand often end up in a slave mindset, feeling like the world's a scary place they can't manage. Nietzsche's thoughts line up with current attachment theories which show how early bonds shape us. If a child has caregivers who are consistent and caring, they often become self-assured and independent adults. But with erratic or dismissive guardians, kids might grow up anxious and needy, or keep others at arm's length. These early patterns can dictate everything from careers to how we interact with partners and kids. The silver lining here is that these patterns aren't set in stone. With therapy and mindful experiences, they can change. In therapy, getting to the root of these mentalities helps therapists get why a person ticks the way they do. Those stuck in a slave mindset might feel trapped, or like life's just beating them down, often because they've faced trauma or neglect. Therapy aims to honour their experiences while nudging them to see what they can change now. It's about highlighting their strengths and helping them take charge of their lives. On the other hand, clients with a master mentality might come off as confident and in control, but they could have a tough time connecting with others if they're too self-reliant. The key is helping everyone find a balance. Sometimes folks who are super confident can end up coming off as a bit cocky. They might have to work on opening up and realising it's okay to lean on others from time to time. They should also take a closer look to see if the values they hold dear are truly theirs, or if they have unintentionally taken them from their family or society. In therapy, the goal is to help these individuals blend their strong sides with a good dose of wisdom and kindness, regardless of the personality type. The key is striking the right balance between standing on their own and staying connected with others, while also juggling taking care of themselves and looking out for people around them. Part 10. The Unconscious Mind. Understanding Ourselves. Nietzsche had some pretty groundbreaking ideas about the unconscious mind back in his day, and they still matter a lot even now. He realised that what we're actually aware of is just a tiny drop in the ocean of what's going on in our minds. A lot of what we do is influenced by things we don't even realise, something he figured out way before Freud came onto the scene. This insight laid the groundwork for depth psychology as we know it. If we get how the unconscious works, it can make sense of why we sometimes behave in ways that don't match what we think we want, and it's key to understanding how people truly change through therapy. Nietzsche had this thought that consciousness wasn't primarily about understanding ourselves. It was more about getting on with others. He believed we developed the ability to think in words mainly to communicate and coordinate socially, not to get to know ourselves better. So basically, a lot of what we think are our conscious thoughts are just deeper things turned into social talk. When you're sure you're being logical in your decisions, often you've already made a choice deep down, and you're just weaving a story to explain it. It's why people can give these long explanations for what they do that don't really match their real motives. They're not necessarily fibbing. They truly believe in the stories their consciousness is spinning. The unconscious plays by its own rules, different from conscious thinking. It's all about desires, emotions, and instincts, rather than cold, hard facts. It loves symbols, metaphors, and associations instead of just straight meanings. It's all about habits and patterns, not really about conscious decisions. Things like early experiences, cultural norms, and biological urges shape it, and sometimes your conscious mind never even notices. That's why just using reason rarely shakes up deep-seated beliefs or behaviours. The unconscious has its own logic that needs to be understood and honoured if you're hoping to change it. It means you can't just think your way through these patterns. Nietzsche pointed out some ways the unconscious leaks through. Dreams, daydreams, and imagination carry symbolic meanings of our inner conflicts and desires. Those little slip-ups, mistakes, and accidents. They often expose intentions our conscious mind would deny. Behaviour and relationship patterns can show unconscious beliefs and expectations. Big emotional reactions, especially when they seem over the top, usually have their roots in unconscious triggers. and what really gets to us in others might be pointing to hidden parts of ourselves. Modern brain science backs up Nietzsche's views quite a bit. Studies show that most mental activity flies under the radar of consciousness. The brain makes calls before we're aware of them. Feelings start bubbling up in parts of the brain responsible for unconscious processing before hitting the conscious zones. A lot of what we remember, perceive and decide is nudged by unconscious biases and connections. This doesn't mean we're at the mercy of unconscious forces, but does mean consciousness isn't steering the behaviour ship as much as we like to think. For real change to happen in therapy, you've got to tap into the unconscious mind. Just tossing information at people or teaching them new coping strategies only scratches the surface, because it deals with the conscious level. True therapy shakes up those deep unconscious beliefs and emotional patterns. This could mean re-experiencing and working through past traumas, digging into what dreams and fantasies symbolize, or having new relationship experiences that challenge old beliefs. The aim isn't to get rid of the unconscious, but to foster a better partnership between the conscious and the unconscious in our minds. When these aspects of the mind collaborate, instead of clashing, folks tend to feel more genuine, innovative, and mentally liberated. Part 11. The Endless Loop, a mental exercise for true living. This idea of the endless loop is one of Nietzsche's deepest thoughts aimed at living genuinely. He pondered, imagine if you had to relive your life with every single thing happening the exact same way, forever. Would you find this idea terrifying or uplifting? It's not about the nature of reality, but rather a strong personal tool to see if you're living a true life. This exercise makes you fully accountable for your decisions. If you knew you'd keep living every moment over and over, you'd pay more attention to how you live. You'd cut out things that don't truly satisfy you. You'd steer clear of folks who wear you out without giving back real connection. You'd stop chasing dreams influenced by others instead of your true aspirations. You'd aim to create moments you genuinely cherish, experiencing repeatedly. Most people initially feel dread at the thought of the endless loop, because they come to grips with just how much of their life they wouldn't want to live again. They notice how much time is wasted on unimportant tasks, unhealthy relationships, and pursuits that don't truly fulfill them. They become aware of often living according to what others expect, rather than what's important to them. They realize how they often delay things that matter while getting hung up on minor issues. But this initial fear is actually beneficial, because it pushes you toward genuine change. Accepting that this is your one shot at life makes you take it more seriously. The aim is to slowly shift how you view the endless loop, from fear to embracing it. This shift happens when your life aligns more closely with your real values and desires. You start making decisions based on what truly satisfies you, not what you think you should do. You begin saying no to activities and people that sap your strength, and yes to those that invigorate you. You focus on honing your unique skills instead of trying to be someone you're not. You discover meaning in simple moments, rather than waiting for grand experiences. Modern psychology backs up the therapeutic value of reflecting like this. Studies show that thinking about our mortality encourages people to live more genuinely. Research on reviewing life choices finds that those who reflect on their choices regularly make wiser decisions. The age-old habit of memento mori, remembering your death, has been used for mental growth for ages. Nietzsche's concept of the endless loop pushes even further, questioning if you're ready not only to die but to live the same life endlessly. This provides even more drive for living authentically. To apply this test practically, routinely think over your day using the endless loop concept. Each evening, ask yourself, would I want to relive today again? If the answer is no, consider what needs to be different. Are you investing time in the things that don't match your values? Are your relationships nourishing or draining? Are you chasing goals that others set for you, or are they your own? Use these reflections to make small changes that guide your life toward being more authentic. The aim isn't to be flawless, but to keep moving toward a life you truly want to experience forever. Part Part 12. Using Nietzschean methods in today's therapy. Today, more and more therapists are seeing the good stuff in the Nietzsche's ideas and are coming up with techniques inspired by his way of thinking. Instead of just trying to make symptoms go away, these new methods are all about empowering people, fostering creativity, and building values. The idea is to focus on building strengths, rather than just fixing what's wrong. Encouraging clients to take charge of their lives and not just be at the mercy of their situation. Understanding these methods gives therapists and clients alike some pretty awesome tools for psychological change. One major method is the process of figuring out what values truly belong to the client through what's called genealogical analysis. Basically, this means helping people dig into where their beliefs and values come from. Are they really their own, or just leftovers from family, culture, or society? Therapists might ask questions such as, where do you think this belief started? Or, does this value still work for you? Or is it just something you've been carrying from the past? By figuring out which values are borrowed and which are truly theirs, clients can start living a life that's more in tune with themselves. Another important technique is changing how clients see their struggles, viewing suffering as a potential strength. Instead of just trying to get rid of symptoms, this approach helps clients see how their hard times have actually helped them grow. A therapist might ask, how has going through this made you stronger? Or, what have you learned from this that you wouldn't have otherwise? This method honors clients' pain while also showing them its power to change them for the better. Therapists also use perspective-taking exercises to help clients see the bigger picture, what Nietzsche called perspectivism. When clients get stuck in a particular way of thinking, therapists encourage them to consider different angles. They might ask, how might your best friend see this situation? Or, if you were giving advice to someone in your shoes, what would you say? This kind of flexible thinking lowers emotional intensity and boosts problem-solving skills in creative ways. Instead of just a fun activity, creative expression becomes part of the therapy process. Nietzschean methods push clients to show their true selves via art, writing, music, or whatever creative outlet works for them. The point isn't about how good the art is, but about being honest in the expression. Through creativity, clients can tap into their subconscious, learn more about themselves, and even outline new paths for their lives. Essentially, they start crafting their own life stories. Power analysis is another tool that helps clients see where they might be giving away their power and how they can take it back. Therapists help clients notice when they're stuck in a victim mindset instead of taking action. They explore questions like, where in your life do you feel powerless? Or, what's one thing you could do to change that? This isn't about blaming them, it's about helping clients see their own power, even in sticky situations. Lastly, future self-visualization invites people to imagine who they could be if they really pushed their limits. It's about picturing that highest version of themselves and then figuring out the steps to get there. This doesn't just inspire change, it shows how today's actions build tomorrow's identity. By looking past present limits, clients can see potential paths forward, shifting the focus from just fixing problems to creating great new possibilities. This naturally leads to more hope and the drive to grow. Part 13. Nietzsche pointed out that humans are innately creative, with the power to mold their character and future. This was a groundbreaking idea at a time when religious and scientific determinism held sway. Nietzsche believed we aren't static beings with fixed traits, but rather unfolding projects of self-creation. Delving into the mindset behind this creativity reveals how people can transform themselves, offering real tools for personal growth on purpose. The journey of creating begins by breaking down or dismantling old patterns. To come up with something fresh, you must be ready to let go of things that aren't beneficial anymore. This could mean questioning family inherited beliefs, distancing yourself from relationships that stifle your growth, or walking away from career choices that don't fit with your core values. This step of destruction can be uncomfortable due to the uncertainty and loss of familiarities, but it's crucial for a breakthrough in creativity, since you can't really create new things based on outdated ideas. Cleansing through destruction makes room for new creations. Next up is the phase of trying things out and playing around. Once old habits are out of the way, you have to explore new ways of being without any guarantee of success. Nietzsche referred to this as intellectual courage, the bravery to risk mistakes or seeming ridiculous. You might trial new forms of expression, delve into different social roles, or toy with alternative belief systems. What's important here is to stay curious rather than fixate on specific results, as you're essentially collecting insights into what truly resonates with your genuine self, rather than chasing preset outcomes. The phase that follows involves weaving together and committing to your newfound patterns. As you play around with various possibilities, some start to feel genuinely right for you and sustainable. You then begin to dedicate yourself to fostering these new states of being. Disciplined efforts and persistence are key, as building new habits and identity takes time and continued practice. It's vital to pour energy into nurturing this growth, even if the rewards aren't seen right away. This is where many stumble, giving up before these new ways become ingrained. Current research on neuroplasticity shows the brain is capable of substantial change throughout one's lifetime. New neural pathways can form through deliberate practice and repetition, meaning personality, habits, and even deep-rooted beliefs can shift with intentional efforts. Studies on identity formation indicate that those engaging actively in self-reflection and making conscious choices craft stronger, more unified identities. Creativity research highlights the need for both divergent thinking, which generates options, and convergent thinking, which selects among them. Nietzsche's approach to self-creation blends these methods. To put this into practice, treat your life like a continuous creative endeavor. Regularly ponder which bits of your identity no longer serve you, the new traits you wish to develop, and ways to explore these paths. Attack this work with the seriousness and dedication akin to an artist focusing on their artwork. Make routine time for self-reflection, experimentation, and practicing newly envisioned habits. Keep track of your growth and insights to continually improve. Remember, becoming your true self is an ongoing journey rather than a final destination. Nietzsche's idea of becoming who you are isn't about uncovering a set essence, but about consciously crafting an authentic self through deliberate decisions and commitment. It's about owning up to who you are and crafting your character, instead of just going along with whatever traits you picked up over time or from others without even noticing. Essentially, it's about writing your own life story instead of just playing a part in somebody else's. And while this is tough, it's also incredibly fulfilling. When you do this, you shift from just going with the flow of life to actively shaping what life means to you and what you find valuable. Part 14. Nihilism and the Modern World Meaning Crisis. So Nietzsche had this prediction about what would happen if traditional religious and moral systems lost their grip, calling it a meaning crisis, or more simply, nihilism. This is where life feels kind of pointless, nothing seems to really matter, and all the values people hold seem random. Today, it looks like exactly what's happening in our world, with more and more folks feeling empty, directionless and lost without a clear sense of purpose. To fix this, we need to wrap our heads around what nihilism actually is and how we can tackle it, not just for the sake of our own mental health, but for society as a whole. Nihilism tends to creep in when people stop believing in the bigger, age-old sources of meaning but haven't found new ones to guide them. Back in the day, religion typically gave people the rules and reasons for why life was important and how to live it well. But once a lot of people found those beliefs hard to stick with, they hit a kind of existential impasse, often showing up as depression, anxiety, addiction, or plain old despair. A person who falls into nihilism tends to figure that if there isn't a God or some kind of ultimate moral code out there, nothing truly matters at the end of the day. It's like they've learned helplessness, but on a worldwide level. Without a big picture framework to give their actions meaning, everything feels pointless. Nowadays, nihilism shows up through the roof, levels of depression and anxiety, especially among young folks, and we're seeing more cases of suicide, self-harm, and addictions popping up everywhere. Dipping into politics feels like a waste, with apathy and cynicism widespread, while seeking shallow pleasures becomes a common way to escape that massive feeling of emptiness. Social media doesn't help, as it cranks up the nihilistic vibes by keeping everyone in a loop of endless comparison and draining real human connections to just the surface level. Meanwhile, consumer culture dangles the idea that buying stuff will fill the void, but it only offers short-lived fulfillment. This leaves a generation enjoying the highest material comforts ever but stumbling without any firm existential footing. Nietzsche saw nihilism as both a threat and a chance. The risk is clear. It can drag people into despair, destructive behaviours, and chucking all their values out the window. But it's also seen as a necessity. By wiping out superficial or insufficient sources of meaning, it makes room for the real deal. Someone who's faced nihilism and come out stronger is often tougher than someone who's never questioned the values they were handed. They learn to create meaning from within, instead of just gobbling up whatever's spoon-fed to them. This is what Nietzsche referred to as being a free spirit, able to live without clinging to complete certainty. To deal with nihilism, therapy focuses on helping people build meaningful lives on their terms, not just leaning on outside authorities. It's about developing what existential therapists call authentic existence, where folks take the reins on deciding what their values and life goals are. It's about finding meaning in the ride itself, rather than some distant finish line or reward. People start to make value through their actions, bonds and contributions instead of searching for it in some preset cosmic scheme. Beating nihilism often means figuring out personal values through a bit of self-reflection and trial and error rather than just copying what came before. Jump into activities that bring real satisfaction from within, not just chasing outside accolades. Forge deep relationships rooted in true connection and not just random small talk. Play a part in something bigger than yourself, whether it's through work, volunteering, or creating something new. Get into the habit of gratitude and mindfulness to find worth in ordinary, everyday moments. Accept the uncertainty and ambiguity as just parts of being human instead of problems that need fixing. The real key to warding off nihilism is to choose to embrace life fully, even with its challenges and unknowns. This takes building emotional toughness, having the bravery to think critically, and a knack for creative living. You've got to take charge of crafting your own sense of purpose, instead of just waiting for it to come from somewhere else. When folks really get the hang of this, they usually feel more content with life compared to those who depend on the usual places to find meaning. They become more mentally independent and bounce back from setbacks more easily. They shift from being just people searching for meaning to actually creating it themselves. In part 15, we dive into how Nietzsche's views on herd mentality shine a light on the way social media and cancel culture work today. Nietzsche noticed that most folks would rather stick with the crowd for the comfort it brings than venture into the world of independent thought, which can be pretty daunting. Social media just boosts this tendency by forming online collectives where conformity is the name of the game, reinforced by likes, shares, and social pushes and shoves. By wrapping our heads around these psychological workings, we get a clearer picture of the social issues we face now, and can better navigate staying true to ourselves in a world that loves sameness. The whole idea of herd mentality is about survival. Staying part of the group often meant staying alive, so we've ended up being super tuned into what others think of us, a trait that served us well back in tribes but now can mess us up in massive, faceless online spaces. These same survival instincts can lead us down the path of mob mentality and groupthink. Social media takes advantage of our desire for acceptance by giving us instant feedback. Each post gets immediate reactions through likes, comments or shares, creating this loop where people tweak what they say just to get those thumbs up signs, rather than honestly saying what's on their mind. Over time, this changes how they see themselves. They stop being real and start acting for approval, trading their true selves for fleeting online fame. Cancel culture is this herd mentality, taken to its extreme. Step out of line with what the group deems acceptable, and you risk facing an army of digital critics ready to publicly shame you, impact your work life, and leave you on the outskirts socially. This atmosphere of fear makes people hesitant to speak their mind, pushing them to self-censor and follow the crowd. What you end up with is a surface-level agreement that hides real differences in thought and emotion. Nietzsche warned that letting the herd lead the way breeds mediocrity, because groups often settle on the easiest, least controversial ideas. The innovation we need to drive progress stems from daring to be different, but herd mentality punishes uniqueness. That's why a lot of what's on social media feels so bland and uniform. There's a system in place that rewards fitting in and penalizes standing out. The way to push back against this herd mentality is by embracing what Nietzsche called intellectual courage. This means thinking for yourself even when your ideas aren't what everyone else is shouting about. It's about looking within for validation, not just waiting for others to tell you that you've got it right. Practice speaking your truth, even if it's not the most popular take. Spend time with people who prefer realness over just getting along, and who support free thinking. Get comfortable with not having all the answers, and don't be too quick to jump on whatever everyone else is doing. One practical tip is to cut back on social media, which can help ease that pressure to conform. When you're on these platforms, aim to share stuff that truly represents your genuine interests and beliefs, instead of just what you think will go viral. Mix up where you get your information, so you can see things from various angles and stay out of those echo chambers. Work on disagreeing with others in a civil way, respectfully sharing your differing opinions. Keep in mind that your value isn't tied to likes or being part of the in crowd on social media. Build your self-assurance by trusting your own thinking and reflecting on things personally. Part 16. Nietzsche threw a curveball at the usual ways we think about what's good for our minds versus what's morally right. He suggested that society's version of what's morally good might actually be bad for your mental health, and things that seem wrong could sometimes be what you need psychologically. This idea shakes up how we consider moral values and their impact on our mental well-being, both for therapists and those in therapy. Typically, conventional morals push ideals like putting others first, staying humble and shutting down natural urges. While these can keep things peaceful in society, they might do a number on your own mental health. For instance, someone who's always prioritizing others might seem like a saint, but inside they could be brewing with resentment and losing touch with who they really are. A person who never says what's bothering them might come off as calm, yet end up with depression or secret anger issues. Following rules may make someone appear well-behaved, but often strips away joy and creativity. Sticking to moral rules without question can feel like being locked up in a psychological cage. On the flip side, staying mentally healthy means being true to yourself and embracing all parts of who you are, even the ones that aren't so pretty by society's standards. A mentally healthy person knows it's okay to get mad sometimes, to chase their own passions without guilt-tripping themselves, and to stand up against authority when needed. They understand it's fine to be selfish in looking after themselves so they can then be there for others authentically. They know how to be assertive about their goals and boundaries. They choose to acknowledge those darker parts rather than shove them aside, which might clash with typical moral expectations. The therapy world needs to take note of this. There are moments when clients might have to shed some traditional morals to actually find psychological well-being. Someone who can't stop pleasing others might need a lesson in putting themselves first. A person used to saying yes might benefit from learning how to assert themselves. Someone burdened with guilt might need to start accepting their desires, and those who usually submit might be better off challenging authority a bit. This doesn't mean therapists should encourage harmful behavior, but they should recognize that sometimes mental health needs might push people to go against social norms. The goal is being real and true to oneself, not just putting on a moral show. Current studies back up this idea of separating psychological and moral health. They indicate that folks obsessed with looking good morally often deal with more anxiety, depression, and rocky relationships. Research about staying true to oneself shows that when people speak their minds and share their feelings, they tend to have better mental health than those who just toe the line socially. Studies also highlight that being taught to stand up for oneself and set boundaries can boost mental health, even if it doesn't sit well with everyone around. This mindset doesn't mean tossing out all moral values, but it calls for a deeper look at ethics. Real morality should lift people up, not drag them down mentally. If moral frameworks keep causing harm, it's time to question and change them. The aim is to find a life path that respects one's true self, while also being responsible to others. It means looking past rigid rules to build a moral understanding that's wise enough to handle life's grey areas. It's about being an active decision maker in moral issues instead of just a follower. Practically, this means checking in on whether the morals and actions you live by actually boost or hurt your mental health. Think about it. Are your values actually making you happy, or are they just weighing you down? Are you doing the right thing because it resonates with who you are, or is it just to avoid criticism? Maybe there's a part of your life where sticking too strictly to societal norms is actually making you less happy. It's key to think this over carefully, keeping in mind the impact on others. But don't forget that your own truth and mental health matter too. Taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's crucial if you want to truly care for others. Part 17. So let's dive deep into how suffering plays a part in our psychological growth, the way Nietzsche sees it. He's got this radical idea. Tough times aren't something to just sweep under the rug, like we often try to do nowadays. Instead, he believes slogging through tough experiences is where real growth happens. Now, he's not saying we should go out of our way looking for pain, but some suffering can't be dodged, and when we face it head on with the right mindset, it can actually change us for the better. If we tune into the good kind of suffering, we can tell apart the pain that heals from the pain that just continues to hurt. Not all suffering's the same. We've got the nasty, pointless stuff like abuse and trauma that just knocks folks down. This kind of suffering usually calls for an escape route, some healing, or just plain stopping it in its tracks. On the flip side, there's suffering that, believe it or not, can actually fuel growth. These are the growing pains you get from pushing yourself, tackling challenges or navigating big changes. Learning a new skill or taking risks can be uncomfortable. Letting go of old ways is tough, and all of these contribute to our development. Good. Growth-friendly suffering often has a few key traits. Firstly, it's something we choose or at least accept, rather than something forced on us. It's also got a clear beginning and end. It's not endless or pointless. This kind of suffering strengthens us, makes us wiser, and doesn't just wear us down. Plus, it often ties into something bigger than ourselves rather than leaving us trapped in our own misery. When suffering ticks these boxes, it's a real game changer. Modern psychology has caught on to these ideas, and they show up in concepts like post-traumatic growth. This is where, after going through something really hard, people report coming out the other side stronger and with more appreciation for life, better relationships, maybe even some spiritual uplift. But this kind of growth doesn't happen by itself. It all hinges on how we understand and assimilate what we went through. If we can find some kind of meaning in the pain, we're more likely to benefit from it. In therapy, it's all about helping clients figure out which kind of pain they're dealing with. Is it dragging them down, or could it be helping them grow? For pain that's just plain unproductive, the goal is to dial it down through therapy, meds, or changing up the environment. But if the pain has potential, therapists aim to give it purpose, possibly by reframing challenges as growth opportunities, zeroing in on strengths that come from the tough times, or connecting personal struggles to something bigger. It's not about wiping out all suffering, just making sure whatever pain we can't avoid helps us grow. This turns people from sufferers into survivors who draw strength from their past. Nietzsche talks about amor fati, or this idea of loving our fate. It's about realizing that the tough experiences we go through make us who we are. This doesn't mean we put suffering on a pedestal, but recognize it's part of what shapes our strength. wisdom, and compassion. By rethinking past pain, it becomes more than just something that held us back. It becomes an asset in our psychological toolkit. The aim is to get more savvy about how we deal with discomfort and challenges in life. When you're up against tough times, try asking yourself what lessons you might learn from the experience. Consider how this struggle could help you grow. Think about what new strengths you might gain by dealing with this challenge. This isn't about being thankful for every bit of hardship, but about finding ways to pull value from the pain you'll inevitably face. Learn to tell the difference between the kind of suffering that can help you grow and the kind that only drains you. Cut down on the latter, but try to find purpose in the former. Keep in mind that dodging every uncomfortable situation even stops you from building up resilience and strength. Part 18 dives into the idea of perspectivism, a concept put forward by Nietzsche, which suggests that there aren't absolute truths, just different interpretations coming from various angles. This doesn't mean every view is equally right, but rather that every perspective has its limits and biases. Grasping this concept helps make you more adaptable mentally and can prevent the kind of inflexible thinking that often causes emotional struggles. This understanding is hugely important in therapy, relationships, and self-growth. Perspectivism is about realizing that all knowledge is influenced by whoever's looking at it, shaped by their situation, history, and interests. For instance, a wealthy person and someone with less money will have vastly different views on economics. A parent and a child will see family interactions in distinct ways. Someone who's been through trauma will have a different outlook on the world compared to someone who hasn't. Each viewpoint carries its own truths but might overlook others. The aim isn't to nail down the single right perspective, but to see how beautifully complex things become when we consider multiple angles. Psychological issues often come from being stuck in a one-track mindset that doesn't help your wellness anymore. Depression might cause you to only focus on the negative side of things, missing out on the positives. Anxiety could have you obsessing over what might go wrong, sidestepping signs of safety. Anger could make you view others' behaviours as intentionally harmful, overlooking innocent reasons behind them. These stuck ways of thinking can box people into perspectives that bring needless suffering. Therapy often helps by guiding people to see things from different angles, opening up new ways of understanding and acting. You can sharpen your ability to see different perspectives through specific practices. When facing a tough situation, consciously think about how someone else might see it. What would your friends say if they were in that position? How might things shift dramatically 5 years from now? What advice would you give a friend going through the same thing? What positive spin could you put on the situation? These sorts of questions help break the rigid thought processes and open up new interpretations of what's happening. They foster mental flexibility, which dials down emotional knee-jerk reactions and boosts your ability to creatively solve problems. Perspectivism is also key in understanding others. Instead of assuming others feel and think just like you do, appreciate that they're coming from different places shaped by their own experiences. Behaviour that seems off to you might be perfectly logical to someone else. This doesn't mean excusing harmful actions, but rather getting a grip on the psychological reasoning behind them. This understanding can lessen conflicts and boost empathy and compassion. It lets you connect with the person behind their behaviour instead of just reacting to what they do. In relationships, perspectivism is handy for sorting out arguments. It shows how both people could be right in their own ways. Instead of battling over who's correct, partners can dive into how their different views might cause misunderstandings. They can start to see the value in each other's perspectives and work towards understanding together. This changes hostile relationships into ones where learning thrives from differences rather than conflict. Finally, developing this kind of thinking also requires acknowledging the blind spots in your own viewpoint. Consider what you might be missing from where you stand. What biases could be colouring your understanding? How would someone who disagrees explain their side of things? This kind of intellectual humility keeps you from becoming too set in your ways and opens you up to information and possibilities you might not have considered before. You gain the kind of wisdom that understands how complicated human experiences can be, while steering clear of the idea that says every opinion is just as valid as the next. Truth is, some points of view are more correct, useful or moral than others, but none of them cover everything perfectly. What's important is working toward understanding that gets closer to the truth, and that can be more beneficial, while also staying ready to change when new insights or experiences come along. Part 19. The Psychology of Values and Creating Them. Nietzsche really shook up how we think about values, suggesting they're not some everlasting truths we stumble upon through logic or divine revelation. Instead, he saw them as crafted by humans, which means we're both given the chance and the duty to create values that help people thrive. Grasping the psychology behind how we create values sheds light on why folks often get lost when sorting right from wrong, and it offers ways to build genuine personal ethics. With this understanding, moral issues turn into moments for creative responsibility instead of just rule following. Values aren't drawn from abstract ideas. They're born from what humans need, desire, and how societies are set up. Take honesty. It's valued because humans need trust to get along and work together. Courage? That's important because danger and uncertainty are unavoidable parts of life. Compassion's worth comes from accepting that we're all vulnerable and interdependent. Knowing these psychological foundations can help us pick out which values actually help people grow and which don't. It also shows how values, quite reasonably, can vary depending on the situation or cultural background. A lot of psychological struggles arise when there's a clash between the values we've inherited and what we experience personally. If someone grows up thinking it's always wrong to show anger, they might find themselves battling depression because they're unable to tap into their assertiveness. Someone led to think that success means being relentlessly competitive might end up feeling hollow, even if everyone else applauds their achievements. And the person who's convinced that sacrificing themselves is the pinnacle of goodness could wind up feeling bitter and exhausted. These inner conflicts can lead to anxiety, depression, or issues within relationships. To sort these out, it's important to look at the values we've been handed down and ask ourselves which ones still meet our true needs and which need rethinking or replacing. Creating personal values isn't a one-time gig. It's a journey with several stages. First, figure out what you truly need and want, not just what you think you should want. Next, see if your current values help or hinder those authentic needs. Then play around with different values that might better support your well-being. After that, try these new values in real life to see how they pan out. Finally, tweak and commit to the values that actually help, while staying willing to adapt as needed. Since times change and so do our needs, our values should evolve to stay relevant and useful. This value creation process isn't just for individuals, it's a communal thing too. While personal values have to fit with one's own needs and personality, they also need to work within the scope of relationships and cultural norms. The tricky bit is crafting values that stay true to who you are, while taking responsibility for how those values affect others. The aim isn't to focus solely on yourself and ignore everyone else, nor is it to fully conform and lose touch with your own needs. Mature value making finds that sweet spot where you can creatively balance serving yourself and others. Modern studies in moral psychology back up Nietzsche's ideas about values. Research shows people who take the time to explore and decide on their values experience greater satisfaction than those who just accept what their family or culture hands down. Looking into intrinsic motivation, we find that actions driven by values that hold personal significance are more enduring than actions motivated by external, carrot-and-stick ways. Studies on moral development reveal that the most advanced stages involve reasoning that can poke holes in standard moral doctrines and make revisions. Engaging in practical value creation means regularly pondering what really counts to you and why. Think about this. Which of my values feel truly mine, and which have I picked up along the way from others? If I had a clean slate, what values would I choose? How do my values contribute to my happiness and the happiness of those around me? Where do I need to build new values to tackle the challenges I'm facing now? Remember, crafting values isn't something you do just once and forget about. As you change and grow, your values might need a little adjusting too. The aim is to actively shape your moral compass, not just let it be something you take from those around you. Part 20. True Self versus Society Self. Nietzsche offers a profound insight into psychology, with his idea that we have both an authentic self and a social self. The social self is basically a mask we wear to fit in and be accepted by others, while the authentic self is who we truly are once we peel off all those layers of societal expectations. Finding it hard to differentiate between these two can cause a lot of mental distress because it keeps us from being our true selves. If we can understand this difference, it's a huge step towards feeling fulfilled and at peace with ourselves. From a young age, we cautiously craft our social personas. Kids pick up fast on which of their behaviours earn them praise or keep them out of trouble, and they start to favour those traits while keeping others hidden. Eventually, this social mask can feel like the real us, overshadowing our true nature. We become actors in a play rather than living as our real selves. This split within us can lead to anxiety, depression, or just a general feeling of being unfulfilled. The true self is all about the complete package of who we are, even those parts that society might not give a gold star to. It's a blend of natural urges, raw feelings, creative thoughts, and unique quirks that make us who we really are. Unlike the polished social self, the authentic self can be messy and hard to pigeonhole. It includes emotions like anger, aspects of sexuality, drives, and even vulnerability that the social self often tries to hide. It's about learning to express these genuine aspects of who we are in ways that fit the situation, instead of shutting them down entirely. During big life changes or crises, the clash between our true and social selves can become more obvious. People might find themselves achieving societal success but still feeling like something's missing deep down. They might have poured so much energy into their social role that they've lost sight of what they truly want and value. These moments can lead to what's known as an identity crisis, making people question who they really are beneath everything. As tough as these crises can be, they often provide a chance to become more authentic and balanced. They prompt us to check if our lives are in sync with our true selves. Therapeutic work often involves supporting people to tease apart their authentic and social identities. This means creating a space where they feel safe to explore the parts of themselves they've been taught to suppress or ignore. It involves questioning family and cultural ideas about what's considered acceptable and checking if these ideas still work for them. The aim isn't to ditch the social self altogether, as it plays important roles, but to ensure it doesn't completely overshadow our true self-expression. Healthy people can fluidly access both, knowing when to be professional at work or playful at home, when to be serious or spontaneous. Modern studies strongly back the concept that being true to oneself is vital for good mental health. Research indicates that those who live authentically often report lower levels of depression and anxiety, alongside higher satisfaction with life. Studies on role conflict highlight how a big gap between how we act in public and who we are in private can cause psychological turmoil. Research into self-concept clarity shows that those with a clear, steady sense of identity handle stress better and make smarter decisions. This study backs up Nietzsche's idea that for a mind to be healthy, all parts of your personality need to come together, instead of being kept separate. The aim is to be truly whole, not just put on a split performance. To really integrate, you need to keep checking if the life you show on the outside matches what's true inside. Ask yourself things like, am I being real in my relationships and at work? What parts of me do I feel I need to keep hidden to fit in? How can I be more true to myself while still keeping up with my important relationships and responsibilities? Start small. Try opening up with honest thoughts and feelings to people you trust. Keep an eye on when you're just putting on a show versus when you're actually being yourself. Slowly widen the spaces where you feel comfortable being honest. Just remember, being your true self doesn't mean spilling everything unfiltered. It means finding ways to let your real self shine through in your life. Part 21. God is dead. Nietzsche noticed that more and more people were struggling to depend on religious institutions to guide their lives or provide moral direction. This shift brings both problems and possibilities. On one hand, there's a crisis because people lose the familiar ways they used to find purpose. On the other hand, there's an opportunity because it pushes people to develop their own psychological independence and navigate their own path. Getting what this change is about can help us make sense of many modern mental health challenges and can even point us towards potential answers. When Nietzsche talks about the death of God, what he's really pointing out is the demise of any external authority that once gave people clear answers about living. It's not just about religion. It also includes strict political beliefs, absolute moral codes and cultural traditions that used to tell people exactly what their roles and expectations were. When these outside guides lose their grip, people are faced with what existentialists dub as the burden of freedom, the heavy task of choosing your own direction with no guarantees. This can be pretty scary for folks who are used to being told what to do, but it's also a chance for those ready to take the reins of their own lives. The psychological ripple effects of this shift can show up as things like existential anxiety, depression, or nihilism. People might get swamped by too many choices or feel stuck with uncertainty about what's right. They might suffer from what psychologists call decision fatigue because they're constantly making decisions that were once dictated by tradition or authority. Some react by clinging even tighter to religious or political beliefs, while others slip into a mindset where nothing really seems to matter. Both approaches dodge the difficult but freeing work of developing personal authority and meaningful values. In reality, they try to avoid freedom instead of taking it head-on. Achieving psychological independence means building internal guidance to replace what used to come from external authorities. It's about learning to trust your own judgment, while still being open to what others have to say. It involves crafting your personal values through reflection and experience, instead of just accepting them without question. It means becoming confident in dealing with uncertainty and ambiguity without needing absolute answers. Most importantly, it means taking responsibility for the outcomes of your choices rather than shifting the blame to outside forces. Though it's tough, this work leads people to real empowerment and authenticity. Therapy often involves helping people shift from relying on others for direction to trusting their own instincts. This change means moving from asking what others think you should do to finding out what feels genuine and meaningful to you. It's about getting comfy with uncertainty and ambiguity, rather than chasing after fake certainties. Clients learn to make choices based on their own values and reasoning, while still considering input from those around them. They build faith in their ability to manage whatever comes from the decisions they make. The outcome is true self-reliance that doesn't lean on external validation or guidance. Moreover, the death of God opens up space for what Nietzsche termed as self-deification, not in a narcissistic way, but in embracing full responsibility for the meaning and purpose of your own life. Instead of waiting around for some outside source to tell you what your life should mean, you take charge and define your own significance. This means understanding that meaning comes from your choices and commitments, not from some divine revelation or logic. You choose what's important to you, and then live your life according to those choices. This shift transforms you from a follower into someone who independently creates value and meaning. Growing into a more mature version of yourself can be super tough, yet incredibly fulfilling. Part of this journey is learning to stand on your own 2 feet when it comes to making big life choices. Start by taking a closer look at the beliefs and values you got from your upbringing and figure out which ones still make sense for you. Make decisions using your own judgment instead of seeking a nod of approval from others. Get comfortable with not having all the answers by making choices even when you're not 100% certain. And instead of dodging every risk, let your slip-ups teach you valuable lessons. As you get better at facing challenges alone, you'll notice your confidence starting to soar. Keep in mind, though, being independent doesn't mean cutting off ties. You can still stay connected with others while being your own person. The aim is to be self-reliant in a way that supplements, not sidelines, your meaningful connections. Part 22. Nietzsche's take on power sheds light on the complex dynamics found in every human connection. He grasped how influence, control, and autonomy questions sneak into every interaction, often lurking beneath the surface. These power dynamics can be beneficial, encouraging shared empowerment and personal growth, or harmful when they turn into patterns of domination and submission. Getting a grip on power within relationships helps us understand why some interactions uplift us, while others leave us feeling drained, offering ways to build more balanced and fulfilling connections. In relationships, power isn't usually about blatant displays like physical strength or financial superiority. It tends to weave through more subtle channels like guilt, dependency, and emotional tricks. For instance, the partner constantly playing the victim might be manipulating the balance by making others feel answerable for their well-being. Someone who keeps giving excessively could be fostering a sense of dependency to fulfill their own need to feel indispensable. The seemingly selfless person might wield their virtue like a tool for moral dominance, controlling others through guilt. These unnoticed power struggles can end up undermining the ties they're meant to strengthen. Healthy power dynamics, as Nietzsche might describe, involve lifting each other up. Here partners help each other grow and maintain independence, avoiding control or suppression. They maintain their strength without weakening the other or making them bear the burden of their emotions, encouraging development even if it leads to temporary hurdles. They share influence and decisions in ways that respect both sides' needs and desires, requiring emotional maturity and a secure bond that can handle the unpredictability of a true partnership. Often relationship issues arise when individuals seek power through weakness instead of strength. Someone unable to say no might become passive-aggressive, while fear of abandonment can lead to clinginess and control. Feelings of inadequacy may drive a partner to critique the other, trying to even things out. Although these tactics may yield short-term success, they usually build resentment and distance. They show misplaced attempts at asserting power, needing recognition and adjustment towards healthier practices. Couples therapy frequently focuses on helping partners identify their subconscious power ploys and find more straightforward, honest ways to satisfy their needs. This involves building sufficient self-esteem, so one doesn't need to undermine their partner to feel validated. It stresses communication skills for direct expression of needs and worries, avoiding behind-the-scenes manipulation. Couples learn to openly negotiate differences, steering clear of secretive maneuvers. They cultivate the ability to be swayed without sacrificing individual autonomy, creating relationships founded on choice, not compulsion, fostering connection rather than control. These power dynamics surface beyond romantic relationships. They're seen in families, friendships, and work settings too. A parent making their child responsible for their emotional state misuses power. A friend who only reaches out in need is taking advantage of the relationship. A boss who leans on intimidation rather than inspiration showcases insecure power. Spotting these patterns helps in guarding against exploitation and invites scrutiny of one's own potential misuse of power. Ultimately, the aim is to harness whatever power you wield to nourish growth and connection, steering clear of domination and control. Growing a healthy sense of power in relationships means building true self-confidence without needing to control those around you. It's all about finding ways to fulfill your own emotional needs while still enjoying meaningful connections with the people in your life. Part of this is honing your direct communication skills, allowing you to ask for what you need without resorting to manipulation. It's important to notice when you're trying to control someone else and shift that focus back to improving yourself. Encourage and support the growth and independence of others, even when it might go against what you'd prefer. Keep in mind that real power in relationships is rooted in the ability to love genuinely and be loved in return, rather than in controlling or being controlled. Part 23. Understanding Revenge and Forgiveness. Nietzsche offered an insightful look into the tangled psychological web of revenge and forgiveness, tackling how we deal with being wronged. He pointed out that the urge to get back at someone who hurt us is a natural part of being human and serves various important purposes psychologically. At the same time, forgiveness could either mend wounds or mask vulnerability, depending on the situation. This balanced take helps illustrate why simply telling someone to forgive and forget doesn't usually work, and suggests better ways to deal with grudges, which is important for healing individually and maintaining good relationships. The need for revenge crops up because we seek to regain balance after getting hurt. When someone wrongs us, it feels like they've taken something from us, creating an imbalance. Wanting revenge is like trying to settle the score and make sure they face the consequences of their actions. This urge isn't always a sign of a problem and can be useful, like deterring further hurt or keeping our self-esteem intact. But things go awry when revenge becomes all-consuming, or when it's way out of proportion compared to what was originally done. The key is to find a way to regain balance without being torn apart by the process. Nietzsche made a clear distinction between active and reactive ways to handle getting hurt. Active responses mean taking steps to deal with what happened, protect yourself, or stop it from happening again. This could involve setting boundaries, cutting off harmful ties, taking legal action, or using the experience to grow personally. Such actions boost one's sense of power and dignity while helping them progress. On the flip side, reactive responses involve stewing over what happened, holding on to resentment and plotting revenge, which keeps you stuck in the past pain. These reactions often end up hurting the injured person more than the original wrongdoing itself. From Nietzsche's perspective, real forgiveness stems from strength, not weakness. It takes place when someone no longer needs to seek vengeance because they've regained their confidence and self-worth through other means. This kind of forgiveness is a choice, not something done out of obligation or pressure to conform to societal norms. It frees the individual from being shackled to the past. Conversely, fake forgiveness often hides ongoing bitterness or is a tactic to dodge confrontation and keep the peace. This doesn't heal the root wound and can result in passive-aggressive behavior or repeat conflicts. The genuine path to forgiveness involves several steps. First, it's crucial for the hurt party to fully recognize how they've been wronged without glossing over or justifying it. Next, they should express their genuine anger and pain instead of burying these feelings. Taking necessary actions to safeguard themselves and regain control is also important. Further, they must try to find some meaning or lesson from what happened. Ultimately, they choose to let go of resentment, not to pardon the offender, but to liberate themselves. This isn't something that can happen overnight or be forced, but should unfold naturally as they heal. Jumping too soon into forgiveness can hinder rather than help recovery. Today's research backs up Nietzsche's views on how complicated forgiveness can be. It shows that true forgiveness is linked with better mental and physical health, while fake or rushed forgiveness can increase emotional turmoil. Studies indicate people who bottle up their anger often suffer from depression, anxiety, and troubled relationships. Research on post-traumatic growth highlights that those who seek meaning in their pain often let go of resentment naturally during their healing journey. When you're dealing with someone who's hurt you, it's important to start by making sure you're safe and doing whatever you need to protect yourself. It's okay to feel mad or wounded, and you don't have to rush into forgiving them right away. Find healthy ways to let those emotions out. Maybe jot down your thoughts, have a chat with friends you trust, or even talk it over with a therapist. Think about what steps you can take to reclaim your power and self-respect. Try to see if there's any lesson or strength you can take from what happened. Once you've gone through all that, then think about whether forgiveness is something that benefits you. Keep in mind that forgiving is about healing yourself, not the person who caused you pain. Part 24. So Nietzsche really put a lot of stock in being intellectually honest, seeing it as a top-tier virtue that's key for personal growth. It's all about having the guts to take a good hard look at what you believe and why you do the things you do, without lying to yourself or making excuses. Most of us tend to jump through mental hoops to dodge facing any uncomfortable truths about ourselves. But by developing intellectual honesty, we can cut through those barriers and open up a path to true self-understanding and change. When it comes to intellectual honesty, it's about not mixing up what you wish were true with what's actually true. Many people cling to beliefs because they're comforting or fit nicely with their current way of seeing the world, rather than because they're grounded in reality. Folks might convince themselves they're better, smarter, or more successful than they really are, or ignore glaring issues in their personal lives or jobs because admitting these would mean tackling some tough problems. Intellectual honesty is about accepting reality, even when it's a tough pill to swallow. This kind of self-examination requires you to regularly question what's going on in your head and why you do what you do. It means being brave enough to ask yourself the hard questions. Am I doing this for the reasons I say? What am I avoiding or denying here? How am I maybe fooling myself about my motives? Are there patterns I'm stuck in even though I say I want to change? These questions can spotlight the gaps between what we consciously intend and what we actually do, which often sheds light on why real change is hard to come by. Nietzsche got that most people shy away from self-examination because it shakes up that well-crafted image they have of themselves. It's a lot easier to cling to comforting illusions than to face possibly unsettling facts. But in the end, deceiving yourself only leads to more suffering, as it stops you from tackling real problems. Like if someone refuses to see they have a drinking problem, they can't get over alcoholism. If someone ignores their part in relationship tiffs, they can't make those better. If a worker won't own up to their career shortfalls, they won't learn new things. Self-deception might feel safe for a while, but it's destructive over time. Being intellectually honest means facing a bit of discomfort now for a better future. To cultivate this honesty, you've got to create safe spaces for self-reflection. This could be anything from jotting down your thoughts and feelings in a journal without fear of judgment, to talking with a therapist who can give you candid feedback on your patterns. It might involve meditative practices to boost self-awareness or getting input from the trusted friends who'll speak the truth with kindness. And it's not just about looking at ourselves. This honesty extends to what we believe about the world. A lot of people hold beliefs simply because they got them from family, society, or authority figures. Intellectual honesty means questioning these hand-me-down ideas to figure out which are backed by evidence and which are just products of bias or wishful thinking. It's not about being cynical or tossing out all beliefs, but about being open to changing your mind when you come across better evidence. It's about being ready to admit mistakes and update your views with new info, a crucial skill for growing psychologically and adapting to change. Being honest with yourself and how you think can really set your mind free. Once you stop lying to yourself, you'll tackle real issues, not just ones you imagine. Facing tough truths lets you decide what to do with all the facts in front of you. Admitting what you can't do allows you to either improve or accept those limits without frustration. Realizing why you do what you do helps you make choices that feel true to who you are. This approach creates a stable base for a healthy mind, grounded in what's real, not what you wish were true. The truth might not always feel great, but it always sets you free. By being intellectually honest, you change from someone trapped by their own lies into someone who can truly choose and grow. Part 25. The artist, philosopher as therapist. Nietzsche, with his revolutionary ideas, introduced a distinctive way of looking at psychological healing. He mixed deep philosophical thinking with artistic expression, seeing himself as both a thinker and a creator. Through his writing, he delved into psychological insights not just to heal himself, but to offer a therapeutic avenue for others too. This style of therapy suggests that genuine healing requires a mix of insightful analysis and creative transformation. Today, more therapeutic methods are embracing this blend, meshing the mind's cognitive understanding with the vibrancy of expressive arts. Traditional therapy tends to be about dissecting issues and finding ways to deal with them, which can be useful, sure, But Nietzsche had this figured out, that real change often needs more than just understanding things logically. It calls for engaging the imagination and embracing new possibilities. Art forms like painting, music, literature, and similar creative avenues can touch parts of the mind that logic just can't reach. They give us different ways to explore feelings and experiences that might be too hard to pin down with words alone. Plus, these creative activities offer a chance to experiment and have fun, which can lead to real meaningful change. The idea here is to view your life as a piece of art in progress. Instead of thinking you're a set personality with fixed traits, consider yourself as someone who can continuously evolve. This means using your analytical side like a philosopher to understand your current habits, and your imaginative side like an artist to dream up new possibilities. You're like both the artist and the artwork, shaping who you are through conscious decisions and creative experiments. Seeing personal growth this way turns it from being just about solving issues to being a creative journey. It taps into our natural urge for creating and expressing ourselves, making growth something engaging and sustainable. Creativity serves many roles in therapy. For one, it gives you a safe space to let out emotions you might find hard to express directly. Whether it's through writing, or painting, or music, these outlets can help manage feelings like grief or joy in ways pure talking can't. Secondly, diving into creative tasks can bring about insights naturally, rather than forcing them. The process itself can be therapeutic, offering moments of flow that help us stay present and not dwell on things. Finally, creative outputs can turn abstract feelings into something tangible, making them easier to understand and work with. The philosophical side of this approach means thinking deeper about the meaning behind your experiences. It's about asking those big questions on purpose, values, and who you truly are, rather than only focusing on the immediate issues. Philosophy provides context for understanding suffering, growth, and what it means to be human, helping place personal struggles within a larger frame. Recognizing the deeper significance of their challenges often gives people more drive to change and find peace with things they can't change. These days, therapy is increasingly weaving in artistic and creative elements. There are various established forms like art therapy, music therapy, dance therapy, and writing therapy that harness the healing magic of creativity. Approaches like narrative therapy help individuals rewrite their life stories in more positive ways, and mindfulness practices often include creative activities to build awareness of the present moment. Even traditional cognitive therapies are starting to see how helpful metaphors, visual imagery, and creative exercises can be for making changes happen. These developments back up what Nietzsche said about how real healing involves connecting with the entire person, not just their logical side. The practical side of this idea is about mixing both thinking and creativity into how you work on your personal growth. Make time to think deeply about big questions like meaning, purpose, and what you truly value. Get involved regularly in creative stuff that lets you show who you really are, whether it's writing, art, music, or even dance. Use these methods to tap into emotions and stories that are hard to put into words. Try out different creative outlets to find out which one fits best with your mood and interests. Bring together thoughtful analysis and imaginative exploration for more profound, long-lasting change. Keep in mind the aim isn't to create perfect art, but to express yourself genuinely and transform personally. See your life as both a deep philosophical search and a creative work of art continually in progress. Part 26. Nietzschean CBT, Challenging Thoughts and Creating Values. Regular CBT tends to focus on fixing flawed thinking patterns, but a Nietzschean angle digs deeper into the values and assumptions those thoughts are based on. This deeper dive doesn't just tackle mental hiccups, but also encourages people to come up with fresh ways to understand their experiences altogether. It changes the therapy game from just fixing errors to actually building new values. Ordinary CBT points out thought distortions like all or nothing thinking, blowing things out of proportion, catastrophizing, or taking things too personally, all of which can add to emotional struggles. These methods are great because they help individuals think in more balanced and realistic ways. But a Nietzschean spin takes it to another level by asking deeper questions. Where do these skewed thought patterns start? What beliefs make these thoughts click in the first place? How could new value systems flip our understanding of the same events? By looking at it this way, it becomes clear that many mental issues aren't just about twisted thoughts, but about the shaky value systems backing them up. These need to be questioned and, if necessary, swapped out. Take someone who's grappling with perfectionism as an example. While CBT techniques could assist in challenging all or nothing thinking, a Nietzschean view would probe the underlying values that make them cling to perfectionism. It might be their belief that their worth depends solely on their performance, or the idea that making a mistake is the end of the world, or that getting others' approval is critical for their self-worth. By challenging these core ideas, they can build entirely new value systems where perfectionism no longer seems necessary. They might prefer values like personal growth over mere achievement, learning instead of performance, or valuing self-acceptance over the need for external validation. This method nudges clients to become philosophers in their own right about their experiences. Instead of just taking thoughts and emotions as a given, they've got to dig into the worldview, creating these thoughts and feelings. They'll ponder stuff like, what belief do I need to have for this thought to be valid? Or, what values am I leaning on when I feel this way? As well as, how would someone with a different set of values view this situation? And what new belief systems could actually benefit me more? This kind of soul-searching tends to show that a lot of emotional distress comes from outdated beliefs, not suitable for their current life context or authentic self. By crafting new belief systems, they can actually change what they feel on the inside. The journey includes both breaking down and building up. Initially, clients learn to spot and question the beliefs and values that underlie the thoughts and feelings causing their discomfort. They explore where these beliefs originate and whether they still hold water for their well-being. This step often means recognizing how their family, culture and social conditioning have influenced their worldview in not so helpful ways. After this, they dive into creating new values. This means trying out new frameworks that may be more in tune with who they really are and what they want now. The idea isn't to just borrow someone else's values, but to consciously forge a set that fits their specific needs and personality. Some practical methods include exercises for clarifying values, where clients identify their main guiding principles and see how well their current ways of thinking match up to these. Activities that encourage testing different perspectives help clients visualize how someone with a different value system might make sense of the same situation. Real-world experiments allow clients to try out these new value systems practically to see how they go in reality. Engaging in creative expression exercises offers a unique way for individuals to rethink their experiences. Whether it's through art, writing, or role-playing, these methods open pathways to new understandings. The aim is to foster flexible thinking that's adaptable across diverse situations, all while being anchored in chosen values instead of default, inherited beliefs. This approach leads to deep-seated change, fundamentally shifting one's self-perception and view of the world, beyond just alleviating symptoms. In the Nietzschean CBT framework, thoughts are seen not only as spontaneous mental occurrences, but as reflections of deeper philosophical beliefs. By altering these core beliefs, individuals can transform not only their thought patterns, but also their entire experience of life. This turns therapy from a medical model of merely repairing what's broken into a creative process that focuses on building more fulfilling ways of being. Through this approach, clients are empowered to shape their psychological reality actively, rather than being passive to their mental habits. The impact is often more profound and enduring than what traditional methods offer, as it tackles the root causes of psychological distress rather than just treating the symptoms. People don't just learn coping mechanisms, they discover how to build lives that are truly meaningful. Part 27. Nietzsche had a unique take on trauma, suggesting that tough experiences can be more than just survivable, they can actually make us stronger. When he said, "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger," He wasn't downplaying the impact of trauma or encouraging a love of suffering. Instead, he was talking about how, if we handle difficult situations the right way, they can lead to real growth and resilience. Modern research backs this idea, showing that people can experience significant personal development after overcoming trauma. Trauma heavily disrupts our feeling of safety, throws our sense of meaning into chaos, and upends our identity. It challenges how we see the world and our place in it, taking away the feeling of control over our lives. It's truly a devastating blow and can't just be brushed off. Nietzsche recognized that the journey of rebuilding our lives after trauma can result in a self that's stronger and more authentic than before. But it's not something that just magically happens. It usually takes a lot of effort and possibly professional help. When people successfully work through trauma, they often look back and, despite the pain, wouldn't want to erase the experience because it shaped who they are. The road to growth after trauma generally involves several steps. First, there needs to be a space to acknowledge the trauma in all its severity, without glossing it over or trying to immediately pin down a meaning. People need a chance to mourn their losses and accept their new reality. Then there's the need to slowly re-establish a sense of safety and stability in their everyday life, which might mean making changes in their surroundings or relationships to foster healing. Finally, it's important to find personal meaning in the trauma, turning it from a completely destructive event into something that aids their development. This is a personal journey and shouldn't be hurried. Some people find meaning by helping others in similar situations, discovering strength they weren't aware of, gaining a deeper appreciation for life and relationships, or developing philosophical views that help them make sense of their suffering. This meaning has to come from the individual themselves, not from others pushing interpretations onto them. Trying to force a positive spin on trauma right away can hinder natural healing. People need to confront the hurt before they can appreciate who they've become as a result. Research today confirms that many trauma survivors actually do experience something called post-traumatic growth. They often report feeling a renewed appreciation for life, stronger bonds with others, newfound personal strength, spiritual growth, and seeing new possibilities for their future. But this growth typically exists alongside ongoing trauma challenges. It doesn't replace them. The aim isn't to erase trauma's effects completely, but to see them as part of personal growth rather than allowing them to overshadow it. Therapies focusing on post-traumatic growth help people recognize and build upon the strengths they've gained from enduring hardship. This could mean recognizing newfound empathy, deeper emotions, spiritual insights, or courage, all of which come from their journey through trauma. Therapists work with clients to shift their perspective from being victims to seeing themselves as survivors, highlighting their strength and ability to bounce back, not just focusing on their hurt. This approach doesn't ignore the impact of trauma. Instead, it places it within a broader picture of human growth and adaptation. The aim is to help you understand that you can become stronger after facing tough times, instead of feeling like those experiences only caused harm. This involves pinpointing the ways in which challenges have helped you grow, become wiser, or built your character. Reflect on questions like, what new strengths have emerged in me that I might not have gained otherwise? How have my experiences deepened my insight about myself or others? What advice would I give to someone going through a similar struggle? How can I use what I've learned to assist others or contribute to something worthwhile? Keep in mind, recognizing growth doesn't mean being thankful for the trauma or pretending it was beneficial. It's about acknowledging that people have an incredible ability to turn even the most difficult experiences into sources of strength and wisdom. Part 28. Nietzsche had a pretty unique take on what it means to be excellent or achieve great things, which is pretty different from what we often see in today's success-focused culture. Nowadays, people tend to link achievement with getting noticed by others, climbing the social ladder, or accumulating wealth. But Nietzsche had a different view, one that emphasized mastering yourself and being true to who you really are from within. His idea of excellence was all about becoming the person you're meant to be, rather than trying to live up to what others think you should be. This notion offers a great path for chasing meaningful accomplishments without getting stuck in the trap of seeking constant approval from others or comparing yourself to them all the time. For Nietzsche, true excellence means honing your own unique talents and potential instead of just fitting into what society considers successful. To do this, you need a deep understanding of your true interests, values, and abilities. It's about diving into activities that really excite and challenge you, rather than those that just bring you praise or monetary perks. Someone who is truly excellent is fueled by an internal drive to perfect their skills and to stay true to their genuine self. They gauge their success based on their own growth and happiness, not by stacking themselves up against others or by looking at how much applause they get from society. This approach creates a kind of motivation that lasts over time because it doesn't rely on outside approval or circumstances. To achieve excellence, you've got to keep pushing yourself beyond what's comfortable or what you already know, a concept Nietzsche called self-overcoming. This is about breaking through your current limits and embracing discomfort to grow new abilities. It's about viewing challenges and setbacks as chances to improve rather than threats to who you are. Those seeking excellence adopt a growth mindset, seeing their skills as things that can be developed with effort rather than as fixed qualities. They learn to be okay with failing temporarily and facing uncertainty because they recognize these as essential parts of learning. This results in resilience, allowing them to keep going even when things get tough without losing steam or doubting themselves. Nietzsche talked about two types of ways people go after success: reactive and creative. Reactive achievement is all about proving your worth through winning or trying to make up for feeling not good enough. This kind of motivation often leads to getting obsessive about being perfect, always comparing yourself to others, and being really worried about failing. On the flip side, creative achievement is about expressing what makes you unique and growing your personal potential regardless of what others think. This approach leads to real internal satisfaction and tends to be more reliable over the long haul. Interestingly, people who are motivated creatively often end up achieving more external success as a kind of bonus for truly engaging with their work. Contemporary studies back up Nietzsche's ideas. Research shows that intrinsic motivation, or being driven from within, leads to better performance and more satisfaction compared to extrinsic motivation, which comes from the outside world. Studies on the state of flow show that people perform their best when they're deeply involved in tasks that fit their skills but still challenge them. Investigations into developing expertise highlight that achieving mastery involves deliberate practice over time more than sheer talent or effort. Studies on well-being reveal that folks who chase goals that matter to them personally feel more satisfied with life than those who follow goals set by others. All this evidence points back to Nietzsche's belief in prioritizing authentic self-growth over outward accomplishments. The journey to excellence also calls for what Nietzsche termed intellectual courage. This involves being daring enough to question the norm, try out new things, and be open to failure if it means real innovation might be around the corner. People striving for excellence often have to go against what's expected of them to truly nurture their unique talents. They must be ready to be misunderstood or criticized, or even face rejection by people who don't get their brand of excellence. First off, it's crucial to have a firm belief in your own decisions and to trust your gut when others might not be on board with your ideas. You've got to stick to your vision even if people around you don't quite get it yet. On a practical note, it's all about figuring out what you're passionate about, what you value, and what you're good at, and then organizing your life to cultivate these aspects consistently. Ask yourself, what activities do I find naturally engaging and invigorating? What would I keep doing even if there was no reward involved? What unique imprint can I leave that truly represents who I am? How can I push myself to evolve without losing sight of my core principles? It's important to aim for mastery in areas that are genuinely important to you, rather than chasing after accomplishments just because they might impress other people. Gauge your progress based on your own development and happiness, rather than constantly comparing yourself to others or relying on outside standards. Keep in mind that genuine excellence is more of an ongoing journey of personal growth, not just a final goal to hit. Part 29. Balancing social influence and personal truth. One of Nietzsche's key observations dives into the clash between social norms and true self-expression. From the get-go, we're molded by family, culture, education, and social systems that dictate how we should think, feel, and act. While all this structure is crucial for things like working together and passing on traditions, it can also hold back our true selves and cap what we can achieve. By getting a grip on this dynamic, we can see why some psychological issues arise and find ways to be true to ourselves without losing touch with society. Social conditioning is often slickly done, working behind the scenes without us even knowing it. As kids, we pick up on what gets us praise or lands us in trouble, which feelings are okay or frowned upon, and which ideas are welcome or squashed. We end up seeing these lessons as hard truths, rather than just cultural preferences. By the time adulthood hits, most folks are so wrapped up in social programming that it colours their worldview, decisions and actions without much question. They mix up cultural norms with human nature and external expectations with their own desires. This leads them to live a life that pleases everyone but themselves, leaving their real self in the shadows. This push-pull between how we've been shaped and who we actually are can get even tougher during big life changes. At such crossroads, folks might start asking if their current path really aligns with what they truly want. They might realise they've been ticking boxes set by others rather than following their own dreams. Though unsettling, because it throws the authenticity of their past choices into doubt, this awareness can also be liberating. It opens the door to a more genuine existence for those brave enough to scrutinise and possibly revise their conditioning. This involves sifting through what society has handed down to keep what's beneficial and toss what's holding them back. Some conditioning is okay and worth hanging on to, but certain parts might need a hard pass. Walking this tightrope to keep it real while still fitting into society is tricky. Going full rogue against social norms can lead to feeling cut off, dysfunctional, or rebellious in a way that just flips the script on the same old influences. Completely going along with the crowd means blending in and overlooking personal potential. The sweet spot is a mix and match approach, deliberately selecting which social influences to keep and which to change based on true personal needs and values is key. This takes owning your power to weigh outside expectations instead of just blindly following or chucking them. It's about being the mindful creator of your unique character, not just a puppet of society's strings. Modern psychology digs into this struggle in terms like false self versus true self, outside versus inside control, and going along versus going your own way. Studies find that folks living true to themselves report being happier and more fulfilled than those who toe the line against their real nature. Identity development research shows well-adjusted people go through phases of acceptance, questioning and careful integration of social influences instead of just soaking everything up uncritically. When it comes to groundbreaking creativity and innovation, ditching conventional wisdom is often a must. Therapy often focuses on helping clients spot the difference between what they genuinely want and what they feel they should want. This calls for creating a safe space where people can dive into parts of themselves that might not tick all the social boxes. People are encouraged to pinpoint where their beliefs and actions come from, to figure out which ones truly resonate with them and which ones are simply adopted from others. They try expressing their real selves in fitting situations, while also learning how to handle societal expectations as needed. The point is not to become a rebel, but to make thoughtful decisions about when to go along with the crowd and when to showcase their uniqueness. This approach leads to mental freedom that strengthens rather than harms social bonds. To truly be yourself, regularly reflect on whether your thoughts and feelings are genuinely yours, or if they're based on what you think you should feel. Consider whether you genuinely enjoy an activity, or just believe you should, or if you're chasing a goal because it genuinely matters to you, or simply because it's expected by others. Ask yourself what you'd change if you weren't worried about what others would think. Practice revealing your true thoughts and emotions with people you trust to understand how it feels. Pay attention to when you're putting on a show versus being authentic. Slowly extend the situations in which you feel comfortable being yourself, while cultivating the ability to manage social expectations when fitting in is important. Keep in mind, being true to yourself doesn't mean you have to ignore all social influences. It's about being deliberate about which influences you decide to accept. Part 30. Becoming your true self. The ultimate goal in therapy. Becoming who you truly are is at the heart of Nietzsche and ideas on psychology, and is the main aim of therapy. This well-known phrase doesn't imply that there's some hidden essence inside you waiting to be uncovered. Instead, it's about actively crafting your true identity through mindful choices and dedication. It's about bringing together all parts of who you are, going beyond limiting beliefs, and expressing your unique potential in the world. Although it's tough, it's probably the most rewarding thing you can do, because it changes you from just going along with life to being someone who creates meaning and value in it. To become who you truly are, you need to navigate through various stages. First off, you have to realize you're not a fixed set of traits, but rather an ongoing project of self-building. This means changing your mindset from finding yourself to making yourself through decisions and actions. Next, take a good look at your current behaviors to figure out what's genuinely you and what's just learned behavior from others. This requires the tough job of separating your true self from the person you've been told to be. You'll also need to muster up the courage to be yourself, even when it goes against societal norms or family expectations. Moreover, it's crucial to embrace all parts of your personality, even those you might want to ignore or suppress. This involves owning up to your darker sides, accepting your contradictions, and figuring out how to express the full spectrum of your human characteristics appropriately. Additionally, it's about creating your own values and meaning, rather than adopting them from outside sources. This means developing an internal compass that can handle life's complexities without needing constant external approval. And remember, this isn't a one-time deal, but a lifelong journey. You need to stay open to change while keeping true to your core. Nietzsche spoke of needing intellectual courage and emotional strength. Intellectual courage is about questioning everything you believe about yourself and the world, even when it's uncomfortable. It's about forming your own opinions, rather than just sticking with what's popular or traditional. Emotional strength is being able to handle the anxiety and solitude that often come with living authentically. It's sticking to your path even when others don't understand or support your choices. Both of these qualities grow through practice and experience, not just by making a decision in your head. A therapeutic relationship acts like a practice ground for expressing your true self. Good therapy allows clients to voice thoughts and feelings they might usually keep hidden. They try out different ways of being and get feedback on how these new approaches feel and work. They practice setting boundaries, asking for what they need, and standing up for their viewpoints in a safe space. Here, the therapist accepts all parts of the client's humanity, including those often rejected elsewhere, providing a healing experience that shows true connection is possible. Finally, living as your authentic self means embracing the unknown. Authentic people can't rely on others to tell them how to live. They must carve their own path. This requires making big decisions without any guarantees and owning up to the outcomes of those decisions. Living true to yourself often means dealing with moments of feeling alone, mainly because not everyone will get or value your unique style. Yet living genuinely brings a profound sense of fulfillment when you share your special qualities with the world. Those who figure this out often feel truly alive and purposeful, a feeling you can't get by just blending in or seeking approval from others. The real test of being true to yourself is wondering if you'd live your life the exact same way over again. This idea, drawn from Nietzsche, asks if you can fully embrace your life's path because it's shaped who you are today. It doesn't mean every moment was perfect or without regret, but rather you understand how every experience has helped you grow. When you can embrace your whole life, with all its ups and downs, you've reached true authenticity. You've shifted from being shaped by hidden forces to someone who actively shapes their own destiny. This is what Nietzsche's ideas and therapy aim for. Becoming a free spirit, creating your own meaning, expressing yourself genuinely, staying connected with others and continually growing.